Hey everyone, Spicy Toast Gaming here. I hope you've been having a great day so far, and I hope this video makes it a little bit better. Today we're going to be talking about the epic relics. People are starting to get them from their golden reliquaries, and so today we're going to break down every single epic relic, giving you some suggestions on who you might want to test out that relic for. I know a lot of the relics are very niche, and so sometimes it can be a little tough finding which relic actually pairs best with each champion. So we'll break all that down here in this video. That being said, I know there's going to be some combination that I just forget to mention or haven't thought of, so if there's a powerful combination that I don't mention in this video, please leave it in the comments below to help your other players. And so I also encourage all of you to go read the comments and see if there's any awesome combinations that your other players have suggested for you. Also, if you want to be part of the discussion for all things Path of Champions, I have a link to my channel Discord down in the description down below. Many of the ideas for the different relics in this video I got from the lovely people over there on my Discord. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's get into it. So we're going to start off with the one epic relic I actually have myself, so that is Found Fortune. Play, draw a card that costs less than my base cost, granted a epic item, and reduce its cost to 0. Now, some important things to note with this relic: this is a play effect, not a summon effect, so you actually have to manually play the card from your hand in order to benefit from this, and then the card has to be less than their base cost, not less or equal to. So if you play this on a 1-cost champion, you're essentially not going to draw anything unless you have a 0 cost in your deck. Now, I think this is best on Elise, because if we take a look at her starting deck, there's only 2 things below her: Spiderling and the Tellstones. Now, what you normally want to do is try to cut the Tellstone so you just have the Spiderlings below you, so that when you play Elise, you'll draw a Spiderling and put that epic item on it. Elise's whole game plan is about buffing up your Spiderlings, so guaranteeing that they get an epic item on them is very powerful. And then you can pair this with something like Gale Force to manually recall her so you can play her again, get that play effect off again, giving your Spiderlings even more epic items. Now, this also can work well for someone like Janna. She's all about playing cost-reduced cards. So drawing a card that's cost reduced, being able to play it for free, so you're triggering all of your star powers, you're helping with her level up condition of playing more cards, and you're also getting an epic item out of it. Now with Janet, you don't necessarily care as much which card you pull. It's more about just having a free cost reduced card that you can play. The epic item here is more just of a bonus, whereas with Elise, it's more about that epic item itself. One other champion that this could work out well for is Samira. So Samira, her level up condition is you're wanting to play 6 cards, and that resets when you get the attack token. So getting another free card that you can play, and then also buffing up that card with an epic item would pair quite well. With Samira, you're trying to rush down the enemy early, so being able to play potentially another unit with an epic item for free, potentially contributing to your level up, as well as just giving you more pressure to rush down the enemy. This is another champion that this relic could work well on. Now, as you probably noticed, most of these champions are all fairly cheap champions, and that's generally because you want to reduce the pool of the available cards that this relic can hit. So if you play someone like Volibear, which I tried out with this relic, yes, you might be able to get one of your other big Titanic units and be able to play that for free, but you could also get one of your 1-cost units, and so it doesn't really help you that much. So this relic is normally better on cheaper champions. Alright, up next then we have Chosen by the Stars. So Fated, which means each round the first time an allied card targets it, it's granted 1/1. So a permanent buff every time you target it with another one of your cards. And it has Empower, 10, Overwhelm, Regen, and Challenger. So if you can get the card up to 10 power, you're going to get those buffs. Now I think this is also another epic relic that will work quite well for Samira. As you see right here, when I'm summoned or strike, create a flare in hand. Those flares, they let you deal 1 damage to the enemy nexus or give an allied Samira Challenger this round. So this would count as targeting her with a spell. So you could keep playing these on Samira, you're generating these, and so you could just keep scaling her up with that Fated. Now, you're probably never really going to hit the Empowered 10, but that's actually not really necessary. This is just another way that you can scale up one of your very cheap units that you can put on the board round 1, and they can just keep getting stronger and stronger. And then if the game goes on long enough, you'll get all those other stats as well. Now, I don't necessarily think this would be optimal for Samira, but I do think it would be a very fun play style of just scaling up this small champion into a massive unit throughout the course of a game. I do also think it would work quite well on Varus. For Varus, he's all about targeting your allies. As you see, his level up condition is you've targeted allies 7 or more times. Now, every time you're targeting your allies, that could count towards Fated if they had that buff. So with Varus, you have plenty of spells you're able to target on yourself to scale yourself himself up, and unlike Samira, Varus would be able to trigger that empowered 10 fairly easily. Now he doesn't need it as much since he already gets overwhelmed when he levels up, but I think this is another fun way that you can scale up your champion round after round. Again, probably not the best relic that you could use, but I do think it would be a fun relic to use on this champion. Now, Aatrox is also another champion that I think would pair quite well with this, especially if you paired it with the Grand General's counter plan. Since you are again targeting your ally every single round, this will let you take out enemy targets with the removal spell you're generating, while also scaling up your unit consistently. And again, with Aatrox, he's easily able to trigger that empowered 10, because when he levels up, he actually gets that 10 power anyways. So another champion I think you could pair this with. In addition to Aatrox, I think both Master Yi and Lee Sin would enjoy this relic as well, since both of them are creating a lot of combat tricks that they can target themselves with. So this would be another way that you can just scale up your units, and I think they would pair quite nicely with this relic. Up next then, we have Death's Foil. So while I'm attacking, I can't take damage or die. I kind of feel like this is one of the worst relics in the game. Now, if you're really struggling with your champions dying while you're attacking, go ahead and throw this on. It's perfectly made for you, but in general, I don't really seem to have that problem. Also, this relic is fairly weak. If they just gave it a bit more of a broad effect, or something more like, when I attack, I can't take damage or die for this round, so you could still have that effect for the entire round once you've attacked, then it'd be a lot more usable. But the way it is, I kind of think there's only two ways you can really use it. One, if you're struggling to keep your champion alive, especially when you're attacking, then all right, go ahead and use this. But the other more interesting way that you could use this is that you could use it for some of the Shadow Isles champions, specifically Gwen. So what you can do is that when you're attacking, you could use a Glimpse from Beyond or Glimpse Beyond on your own unit to get some free draw, because this will still go off and trigger its effect even though your champion doesn't actually die. Now, I don't think this relic is going to be better than many of the other relics you can put on Gwen, but that is just one of the limited niche situations where I thought you could use this. Now, there's other kill spells you could try to use. The problem is for most of the decks, their kill spells are slow, and you can't use a slow speed spell while you're attacking. So if you really need some extra draw, you can pair this relic with Gwen and potentially glimpse your own champion while you're attacking to get that draw without the drawback of killing your own champion. Hopefully we get a champion in the future that can really utilize this, but I'm really struggling to find a champion that actually works well with this. If you've come up with a brilliant idea for this, please list it down below. I would really like to know what you think of it. Next up then, we have Disciple of Shadow. I cost 1 less for each ally in play, and then play deal 3 to all other allies. Now this, I think, is actually one of the best epic relics, and one you can use on a lot of different champions. Sadly, I haven't been able to test this one out to see how it works exactly, but I do have a good amount of champions I think this should work well on. So for one, as you see here, Volibear. Getting some cost reduction on this massive unit is strong, but then if you play this and he kills his own units, that could potentially trigger his star powers and create some more sigils, so you could play another Titanic unit for cheap. So that could be a very strong combo right there. Vi would be another great champion. She normally can create a full board of very small units, and so there's probably many situations where you could just play Vi for free. Now, yes, she'd probably kill all of those units, but normally she's ending the game the round she comes down anyway, so that shouldn't really matter. Tahm Kench, another one that could benefit from this. Now, from his star powers, his units get 2 power and 2 health when they take damage, so this would be still doing more damage to your units than they would receive back, but his units would still potentially get at least a boost in power from you using this, and you could play him a round or 2 earlier. Gnar might also like this as well. He's a champion that you want to try to cheat out early, so any cost reduction for him, even if you're hurting your own units, could really help you out. Kindred, this could pair quite well, as maybe if you kill your own unit, you'll then immediately mark an enemy target, killing them at the end of the round. Thresh, this could be quite good for, since your scale with your own units dying, and somewhat the same for the Poro King. He's a bit too expensive to play at 5 mana, so being able to play him early when you have a board full of cheap units could give you a massive amount of cost reduction, and some of your star powers only trigger when you actually have a unit die, so even if you kill some of your own Poros, it's not the end of the world. Nasus, another one that this could benefit, potentially killing your own units so that Nasus is able to get all the stacks himself and help him hit the board a little bit stronger, since he's going to have more stats from those slay effects kicking in. Again, a lot of this is speculation, as I haven't been able to test this at all, and no one I know has been able to test test this at all. So some of these champions might not work how we're thinking, but all of these are potentially options that might work out well for you. One last one I want to shout out with this is actually Yuumi. So Yuumi's a little interesting. Quite often these special effects don't really work for her, or they don't trigger since you play her as an attach card. So I think this might have an interesting interaction where it's going to make her cheaper, but then when you play her as an attach card, it doesn't actually trigger that other effect of dealing damage to your allies. So for Yuumi, this might be a situation where she just gets the cost reduction, which since you're summoning 2 units at the start of the game with her, that means you could play her round 1, which would be pretty massive. So definitely one that needs testing, but that one could be a very strong contender for this epic relic. Next up then, we have Echoing Spirit. So game start, create 7 copies of me in your deck. Now, I think there's going to be a couple different groups that this would work out quite well for. First, I think it'll work out great for Bard. If you don't know, based on Bard's sort of passive, the more Bards you have in your deck, the more chimes he plants every single round. So filling your deck with a whole bunch of Bards would actually help your scaling. So he's the first and most obvious champion that would pair very well with this. Other than him though, this could also work very well with any Gale Force champions. Since with Gale Force, your champion is now getting recalled at the end of the round, not recalled, but shuffled back in your deck. Having more copies of them in your deck will make it more likely you can play them again. So this will be a solid option for any of those Gale Force champs you want to be using, or if you just really want to draw your champion and you also like your champion's champion spell, that would also be a solid option to just use this on really anyone you're wanting. Next up then, we have Oath of the Guardian. So play, shuffle 5 level 2 champions into your deck and double their stats. Now there's a couple of very interesting interactions you can do with this. For one, you could play it with Jinx, because for Jinx, her second star power is when you level up a champion, create a super mega death rocket in hand. This right here. So with this relic, when you play Jinx, I believe you'll be creating 5 of those rockets, which could deal just absolutely massive amounts of damage to the enemy nexus, in addition to the fact that now you have 5 level 2 champions in your deck. So Jinx is one that this could pair very well with. Leona is another champion that this works very well with, and some of the people in my Discord were actually able to test this out. So her 2-star, when you level up a ally champion, create a Morning Light in hand, it costs 0. Morning Light, give your allies 1/1 this round, activate an ally's Daybreak effect. So creating 5 of those spells in your hand as soon as you play your champion is an absolutely massive swing in power and should be very strong with Leona, because for one, her level up is you've activated 5 Daybreak effects. So even if, which is pretty much impossible, but even if somehow you didn't play any Daybreaks before Leona, you could play her and then use those 5 Morning Lights that she's creating and level her up that round. Pairing this with like a Grand General's counter plan so that you can instantly rally and attack, since your units will all be so buffed up from all of these spells going off, giving them all 1/1 each time in addition to the extra stats they're getting from triggering Daybreak effects. Very powerful relic you can put on Leona. Now unfortunately there's one champion that everyone saw with this and immediately thought that it was going to be completely broken, and that is Evelynn. Now, sadly, despite the fact that for her star powers, it also says when you level up an allied champion, grant allies everywhere 2/2. Riot recently, quote unquote, fixed this so that it no longer triggers from like the legendary power that essentially does the same thing, or this relic. Now, I haven't been able to test this out personally, but I have seen people say that they tested it out and it will not trigger that star power, just granting your whole deck like the 2/2 that you think it would. So a little sad that this won't work with Evelynn. At least that's what I've seen people reporting, but again, I couldn't verify that myself. Now, some other ways to use this relic is just kind of using it as intended. So you play, you shuffle these level 2 champions into your deck with their stats doubled, and then you just go fishing. You try to draw them out of your deck. Echo is great with that with his predict, trying to go through and find these big champions that you can then pull out and play. So any decks that have a lot of draw or predict, such as Echo, can pair quite nicely with this. So in addition to Echo, you could also go for like Janna or Neela. Both of them have a lot of draw, so they should be able to find these champions and then play them. Or you could go for someone like Thresh, where his level up lets you pull a champion from your deck the first time you attack. So he potentially could manually pull out one of these massive champions for you. Overall, a very cool relic that actually will be very strong on many champions. Next up then, let's talk about Packed Powder. So Plunder, I cost 1 less, and then I have 1/1 for each different round you've damaged the enemy nexus. So that Plunder, just means that you activate this effect once you've damaged the enemy nexus. Now for Gnar, you're already trying to damage the nexus every single round, so this should be able to give you a massive amount of stats, which is great because as you can see, you normally want to put a stat relic on Gnar anyways, and then also you're wanting to get Gnar out a little bit cheaper. Now I like running the Scourge of Stash on him, which already has the effect of Plunder cost 2 less, so potentially pairing that with Packed Plunder so that your Plunder now makes him cost 3 less, or just relying on this 1 cost reduction could be enough. But honestly, this relic looks tailor-made for Gnar as it's doing everything that you want for Gnar. Giving you buffs, especially for doing what you're already trying to do, damage the nexus every round, and giving you cost reduction from that plunder, which you already were playing towards. Perfect relic for Gnar. Really hope I get it and can test it out on him. In addition to Gnar, it would also work great for Jinx. You're easily damaging the enemy nexus every single round because you just have to play a card and that happens. Misfortune, again, a lot of different ways to deal a little bit of damage to the nexus every round. Teemo also could potentially benefit from this, especially with your puff caps going off, giving you again a free way to damage the enemy nexus and maybe scale up your Teemo. And then last for this, I think Samira would work out quite well, having some more cost reduction, some more scaling, and normally you are damaging the nexus every round, so that would work out quite well for you. Next up then we have Portal Pal. So when I'm summoned, which that is very important, it's a summon effect, not a play effect. But when I'm summoned, create a random 7 cost unit from your regions, reduce its cost by my base cost. Again, another important fact. That means that even if you're playing your champion for cheaper, such as Volibear, where you have cost reduction built in for him already, doesn't matter, this is going off of your base cost, so that 9 mana. So a lot of important wording to bear in mind here. This would obviously pair very good for Volibear, since it's essentially giving you a likely Titanic unit that you can then play for free, and that Titanic unit will get a strike off from your star powers, and it'll just make dropping Volibear even more impactful. But since this is a summon effect, there are some ways you can cheese this. The most obvious example being LeBlanc. LeBlanc has many different ways of summoning herself over and over again, such as her 2-star. When you've leveled up a champion this game, allies attack, summoning and attacking Ephemeral LeBlanc. So essentially every time you attack, you're going to be triggering this relic. Also, when she levels up, she can make these mirror images that again let you summon a copy of a card, which you can trigger on LeBlanc again. Now, even though you wouldn't be getting a massive amount of cost reduction for this, just 3 off, you'd still be playing a 7 cost champion. Well, 7 or more cost, because another important note that I didn't mention before, it's 7 or more cost unit from your regions. So this potentially will be more expensive. So with LeBlanc, you're only going to get 3 mana off, so not that great. But since you can summon so many copies of LeBlanc, this would be a powerful way to close out games. You can just keep playing these very strong cards for a good amount off. Now, she's not the only one that can trigger summon effects, or cheese summon effects, that is. Kindred would be another great option for this because they also have on their 2nd star power, create a Spirit Journey in hand. And if you have one, reduce its cost by 2, that Spirit Journey, kill a unit, then revive it. That would count as that summon effect. And so now with Kindred, you're getting 4 mana off of whatever cards you're pulling, and you're able to summon a lot of different cards since you can manually trigger those summon effects. Another champion that probably pair amazing with this is Kayn. So with Kayn, you play him. Normally you have 2 strike relics on him. So when I've struck twice, level up and recall me. So when he gets recalled, he goes to a 0 cost. You can then play him again for free, and he transforms into either Rost or the Shadow Assassin. The important thing is he's getting recalled, and then you're playing him again. Both of those should trigger this Portal Pal, and he's a 5 cost champion, so fairly expensive, which means you're getting a bigger amount off for whatever unit you are summoning. So I think this would be another solid champion for you to potentially pair this with. And then last up for champions I want to mention in regards to Portal Pal is Janna. Now again, Janna is all about playing cost reduced cards. So Portal Pal, having another cost reduced card that you'll be able to play. Also, her base cost is 4. That's going to be a large amount off of whatever you're pulling. So very similar to the first epic we covered, I think this would also be a good pairing for Janna to have a strong unit that she can play that still will trigger all of her star powers from having that cost reduction. Next up then, we have Spirit of the Buhru. Other 1 cost allies have Overwhelm, Quick Attack, and Fury. Now obviously this pairs very well with Alawi because that tentacle you're summoning, which is your main win condition, is going to be be a 1 cost, and so being able to give that Overwhelm, Quick Attack, and Fury will be very strong. One of the main roadblocks you need to figure out with Alawi is how to make your tentacle be able to hit the Nexus, so how to either give it Overwhelm or Elusive. Now you can normally very easily do that with your relics, and this is just going to be another way that you're able to do that, and so these two will pair quite well together. But they're not the only ones. There are many other champions that summon 1-cost allies. So Elise is one of them, summoning your 1-cost Spiderlings. The Poro King, you have all of your 1-cost Poros that you're constantly summoning. Evelyn, you have all your Husks you're also summoning. So those all count as 1-cost units. So giving those all Overwhelm, Quick Attack, and Fury is very strong. And so for any of those champions, this relic would also be a solid addition. Next up then, let's talk about the Starforged Gauntlets. The gauntlets coming to the game November 1st if you buy the bundle. Now these are probably the most broken gauntlets in the game. For one, if I'm Titanic, so have 8 power or 8 health, plus 1 starting mana. That alone is huge. A lot of champions, you don't really want to play them until they have their 2-star, because at their 2-star, they get plus 1 starting mana. Getting a additional plus 1 starting mana, so you potentially start the game at 3 mana, is absolutely massive and gives you a huge power spike over your opponents. So that already very, very strong. But then you also have, you can find level 2 champions when you invoke or manifest, even if I'm not in play. So most relics, the champion actually has to be on the board for their effect to take place. So like Luden's Tempest, plus 1 to all your spells and skills, that only happens if you have the champion on the board. For this relic though, they don't have to be on the board for these effects to happen, and both of these effects are very strong. Now you'll be able to use this relic on probably more champions than you realize. So obviously we have Aurelian Soul. He's the one this is essentially made for, and it obviously pairs very well. Now we also have Volibear. He is also a Titanic unit, and he actually has Manifest in his deck from one of his upgrades. So here on your Flash Freeze, you get Storm Calling. Manifest a Titanic unit and summon 2 Sigils of the Storm. So he'd actually be able to benefit from the second part of this relic as well. Now, these are the 2 champions I think most people have thought of, but there's actually many more that you could still use this relic on. Alawi, you can easily get her to that 8 health with several different rare relics, so she would also be able to count as Titanic, getting that plus 1 starting mana. Now, baseline, you wouldn't have any Evoke or Manifest. Normally, that's pretty easy to pick up throughout your run though. Even if you didn't get that picked up though, just starting the game again at 3 mana is very strong. Normally, Alawi can end the game in her very first attack, so being able to get that attack off 1 round sooner would be very strong and definitely worth a relic slot. But wait, there's more. Darius, another champion that's at 6/6, so with several different rare relics, you could have him go up to count as a Titanic unit. So again, you could get that plus 1 starting mana, which for a deck that wants to be very aggressive, this would be perfect for. Again, you don't have that Invoke or Manifest in your kit, but just having that plus 1 starting mana is a very strong effect. And again, you normally can pick up Invoke or Manifest throughout a run, often even without trying. Tahm Kench, another champion that you could potentially get that plus 1 starting mana on. Now, Tahm Kench is a 4-cost champion. You really want him to get it on the board as fast as possible. So being able to get him on the board 1 round earlier, very, very strong. Even though this relic has that modifier of Titanic, most of the champions in the game can actually get that. Now, so far, I've just been showing champions that either have that 6 power or 6 health, but there's actually another common relic, or not common, another rare relic you could use to even make your 5 health champions also count as Titanic. Luminous Orb, another relic that is rarely used but gives you that plus 3 health. So with this, even your 5 health champions, and there's quite a lot of them, can count as Titanic, and so they should be able to trigger that plus 1 starting mana. So while this relic does seem pretty niche at first, I do think there are actually quite a few champions that will be able to benefit from this, and it's nice to have more incentive to play some of the more expensive champions instead of incentivizing us to play all the 1 or 2 cost champions. Now, before you get too excited, I don't think the Bounty Hunter's Renown is going to work out very well with this. This effect normally only triggers after the game already starts, and so I don't think this would activate before the game checks to see if you're Titanic, so you probably wouldn't get that plus 1 starting mana. Now, I haven't been able to verify this because obviously I don't have the relic yet, as it's not in the game yet, the Starforged Gauntlets, but I don't think Bounty Hunter's Renown will work to get your unit to count as Titanic in order to get that plus 1 starting mana. But there are plenty of other relics that will be able to boost up most champions to still hit that Titanic value. Technically, if you wanted, you could stack a bunch of these champions or a bunch of these relics together. For example, may I present you with Titanic Elise, stacking 2 of those together, being able to hit that 8 health. So even some of the cheapest champions in the game, you're still able to boost up enough to use that Starforged Gauntlets if you're wanting to. Now, I don't think this would really be optimal. There's better relics to use than either of these just for that effect, but really you will be able to use this on the majority of champions in the game. It's just going to be the very cheapest champions that won't be able to hit that Titanic if you really want them to. Last up, we have the Beast Within. So allies with a subtype have 1/1 and Overwhelm. So this is a interesting one, not really going to be worth it probably in most situations as it's not actually giving you that many stats, but it could be a interesting relic that might take the place of like Troll King's Crown in some situations. Now obviously this works very well with like Nico, as her entire deck is built around subtypes, so being able to give them all a little bit of extra stats and Overwhelm, not too bad. Elise, pretty much all of your units count as spiders, so another subtype, so all of your units would get that 1/1 and Overwhelm. Pike, most of his units are all lurkers, which again counts as a subtype, which would actually be pretty solid because normally one of the biggest issues with Pike is that your units might have this large attack pool, but they can't actually use it to end the game since they are getting just blocked out. Gnar, another one where most of your units are either Poros or Yordles, so they all have a subtype that again can work with this. And then last up we have Poro King, where obviously all of his units, or most of his units, are all Poros, so they'd be able to trigger this as well. All right, that is it for the video though. I really hope this helped you out. I know I've had a lot of people ask me, hey, I have this epic relic, I don't know who to use it on. So I hope this helped you have some guidance on what relics pair well with what champions. And then I know I will have missed some powerful combinations or gotten some combinations wrong, as I am speculating since I don't have most of these. So if you're someone that has one of these relics and one of the combos I suggested doesn't work the way I talked about, please correct me in the comments down below. I recommend everyone go look at the comments, look what powerful combinations other people are having, as that will just further help you know who to use these epic relics on. All right, I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, liking and subscribing really helps me out. But most importantly, I hope you all have a great day.